Yesterday, I visited the Sky Museum and saw some fascinating installations combining light and sound, as well as paintings incorporating fabric. While other artists' work were very impressive, I was particularly drawn to Christina Quarles' paintings. In the exhibition, I saw her ink and acrylic series. Her portrait of the human body was both innovative and stunning. Quarles' background has played a huge role in shaping her artistic vision. She was born in 1985 in Chicago, a period when conversations about race, gender, and identity were undergoing significant transformation in the US. Coming from a mixed-race background, Quarles often found herself perceived differently in different social contexts. Quarles have mentioned that her mother is white and her father is black. She knows because of her fair skin, white people often see her as white, while in the communities of color, she is more likely to be recognized as having a mixed identity. To really understand where she's coming from, we need to look at what was happening in the 1980s and 90s. The civil rights movement had made a lot of progress, but racial tensions were still high, especially in places like LA, a place that Crows was raised up. The 1992 Rodney King riots showed the deep problems of racism and police brutality.
Brutal attacks.
Terrible, terrible pictures.
In the same time, the AIDS crisis and activism surrounding LGBTQ rights were shaping a new wave of queer visibility. The 1990s also saw the rise of third-wave feminism, which went beyond gender equality to focus race, sexuality, and intersectionality. Growing up in this environment, Krauss began incorporating body art into her paintings from an early age, starting to explore the contradictions within one's complex and nuanced identity. Then I would like to talk her creating process. Her creative process combines hand-drawn and digital art, influenced by her long-standing art education and experience as a graphic designer.
Once I've started to develop the figures, I then photograph the work and I bring it into Adobe Illustrator. And I do a process that includes stenciling. I play around with different compositions and different planes and patterns that can highlight for me a moment where the narrative can start to emerge.
Now let's take a closer look at Ending the Shadow of Burning Light. This is one of my favorite her acrylic drawing that created in 2023. The size is about 30 times 22 inches. Acrylic paint is a great medium for her style because it dries fast, allowing her to layer colors and create a sense of depth and movement. At the heart of this painting is an abstract human body. The figures are distorted and entangled, their limbs stretched and bent in ways that make it hard to tell where one body ends and another begins. This is something Quarles does often. She's not interested in painting realistic anatomy. Instead, she's playing with how bodies are perceived, how they can shift and transform depending on the viewer's perspective. The color here plays a huge role. The figures in the composition are painted with softer tones of pale pinks, peaches, and light purples, while darker hues of deep maroon and inky black create shadows and depths. The contrast between these warm and cool tones adds to the feeling of tension, like the figures are caught between two states, presence and absence, definition and ambiguity. There's also a strong sense of movement. The curved lines, the way the limbs overlap and twist together, all make the composition feel fluid, as if the figures are shifting before our eyes. She also plays with balance. There's a lot happening in the center, but the negative space around it gives the composition some breathing room. What's really interesting is how she plays with perspective. Instead of a clear foreground and background, everything feels layered and intertwined. Some parts of the body seem to push forward, while others sink back into the composition. It's almost like the figures exist in a place that isn't fully defined, just like identity itself can be fluid. Over the past few weeks, I've learned how to analyze art more deeply. And when I actually went to an art exhibition in person, I found that my understanding of the works became even richer. I learned so much more. As for Christina Quarles, I really love her art style, but she also inspired a new idea for me. I believe that artists must have a very sensitive heart. Maybe we can study ourselves and explore our identities in relation to society, but we can also create things that are less about ourselves. Through this, the audience can see the world through the artist's lens, and that's something really powerful.